Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Premier. How will the New South Wales Government respond to the LGBTIQA Equality Bill?
Call the Premier.
Well, I'm pleased to report to the House that the Government will support the member for Sydney's Equality Bill, and likely to be already introduced to the Parliament later today. Important for New South Wales and long overdue. Mr. Speaker, this is a common sense solution. I completely acknowledge that it's not everything that the member for Sydney has asked for, but in my view and the government's view, this is a bill whose time has come. It's important that it's supported in this Parliament, and we ask all members to support the legislation as it's likely to be voted on later today. Mr. Speaker, the bill contains provisions that we regard as common sense changes, and when you consider the fact that every jurisdiction in the country now has a provision for an individual to change their government documents in New South Wales without pervasive, irreversible surgery taking place, and New South Wales is the last jurisdiction to enact that change, I think that mitigates in favour of changing the law, Mr. Speaker, particularly when you consider that New South Wales residents can apply for Commonwealth documents to change their gender, but not state government documents. So you may have a situation as it currently... There's a lot of interruptions. I'm not sure what... Did you want to say it? I'm just worried. Did you want to say it out loud?
Member for Vaucluse, you can leave the chamber in a moment if you want to debate with the Premier across there. I'm not going to tolerate it. Well, member for Port Macquarie, you're on a call. Member for Vaucluse, you're on a call, and I will remove you if you do further interrupt. Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I just make the point there's a lot of interjections. I can't hear what you're saying. You've been very quiet in relation to the bill. I think we'd all like to know what your view is. I invite you.
Member for Goulburn.
No? Okay, fair enough. So, Mr. Speaker, I think it's time that this legislation is passed in the New South Wales Parliament. I think in relation to other provisions in the bill, particularly in relation to those who are the issue of commercial surrogacy, regardless of your views in relation to commercial surrogacy, some people support it, others oppose it, but regardless of how you approach the issue, it's hardly the child's fault. It's hardly the child's fault. And I think it's perfectly reasonable that the legislation reflect that if it's in the interests of the child that a parenting order be issued, the courts are in a position to do just that. And that's again included in this legislation. So, Mr. Speaker, for all of those changes, for all of the time and anxiety I acknowledge members of the LGBTQI community have gone through in the introduction of this legislation, I urge its passage. In relation to criticisms of the government using government time, the simple fact is, Mr. Speaker, this legislation wouldn't have passed unless the Parliament can provide time for it to be debated in the House.
Member for Sydney.
I seek an extension of time.
Additional 2 minutes is granted.
So without that allocation of time, being today on a government business day, the legislation wouldn't pass. So for all of everybody's point of view, whether you're for it or against it, whether you've got a position or not, if it can't actually be debated and put to a vote, nothing changes. In relation to, and I take it at face value, the member for Sydney's repeated assertions that amendments that have been drafted by the member for Sydney have been shared with both the government and the opposition. My understanding is that the Shadow Attorney General have been given those changes progressively over a number of days, and to the best of my understanding, as recorded by the member for Sydney earlier today, no phone calls and no contact was entered into by the opposition. So the interest...
There you go. I'd already...
Members will come to order.
Again, we haven't heard what your view is, so we're happy for you to stand up and have a say. But at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, you do have to engage in this debate at face value, not mislead the House.
That's right.
And at the end of the day, I urge members of Parliament to support the member for Sydney's Equality Bill. I think it's important.
Member for Port Macquarie.
I think it's important for New South Wales. I'd urge members of Parliament to do just that, and I'll get that opportunity later today.